Picture a modern log cabin, a beautiful, expensive structure built with the best materials money can buy. It has a concrete foundation, perfectly milled logs, and a state-of-the-art roof. Now picture that same cabin 10 years later. The foundation is cracked, the logs are rotting, the roof is leaking. The dream has become a nightmare. Why do our modern cabins fail while the simple homes of the pioneers lasted for generations? The answer is buried in the earth. It's a forgotten form of architecture that is so simple, so elegant, and so durable that it puts our modern methods to shame. It's the sod dugout, a house made of dirt, a house that is not built on the land, but becomes part of the land. My name is Sam, and this is Wild America. Part 1. The Myth of the Modern Cabin. We have a romantic image of the log cabin. We see it as a symbol of strength, of permanence, of a connection to the land. We imagine it standing for generations, a testament to the skill of its builders. But the reality is that most modern log cabins are a disaster waiting to happen. They are built on a foundation of flawed assumptions, and they are vulnerable to the same forces that destroy any other wooden structure. The biggest problem is the foundation. Modern cabins are typically built on concrete foundations, poured in place or made of concrete blocks. We think of concrete as being solid, permanent, indestructible. It's the foundation of civilization, literally. But it's not what we think it is. Concrete is rigid, it's brittle, it's heavy, and it's completely disconnected from the earth it sits on. The earth is not static. It's constantly moving, constantly shifting. It expands when it gets wet. It contracts when it dries out. It heaves when it freezes. It settles when it thaws. This is especially true in areas with expansive clay soils or in areas with freeze-thaw cycles. The concrete foundation, being rigid and inflexible, cannot adapt to these movements. When the ground moves, the concrete cracks, and once the concrete cracks, the damage begins. Water gets in. The freeze-thaw cycle begins. Water expands when it freezes, and this expansion puts enormous pressure on the concrete. The cracks get bigger, more water gets in. The cycle repeats. The foundation shifts. The walls of the cabin begin to separate from the foundation. Doors and windows stick. Cracks appear in the walls. The entire structure of the cabin is compromised, and the repair costs are astronomical. Then there are the logs themselves. We use kiln-dried logs, thinking that we are making them more stable, more resistant to decay. We think we're removing the moisture that causes rot. But we're not. We're killing them. We're taking away their natural ability to breathe, to expand and contract with the changing seasons. We're turning them into dead, inert building materials. And dead things rot. The kiln drying process removes the moisture from the logs, but it also removes something else. Removes the natural oils and resins that protect the wood from decay. It removes the flexibility that allows the wood to move without cracking. It creates a wood that is brittle, that is prone to checking and cracking, and that is highly susceptible to insect attack and fungal decay. Water gets trapped in the checks and cracks. Insects move in. Carpenter ants, termites, powder post beetles. They burrow into the wood, creating tunnels and galleries. Fungus begins to grow. White rot, brown rot, soft rot. The fungus feeds on the cellulose and lignin in the wood, breaking it down, turning it into a soft, spongy mess. The logs, which were once the living heart of the cabin, become its biggest weakness. And finally, there's the roof. We use modern roofing materials, asphalt shingles, metal panels. We think we're creating a waterproof barrier. We think we're protecting the cabin from the elements, but we're not. We're creating a trap for moisture, a trap for heat. We're preventing the cabin from breathing, from releasing the moisture that inevitably builds up inside. Every time you cook, every time you shower, every time you breathe, you're adding moisture to the air inside the cabin. This moisture has to go somewhere. In a traditional cabin with a breathable roof and walls, the moisture would escape naturally. But in a modern cabin, sealed up tight with vapor barriers and modern roofing materials, the moisture is trapped. It condenses on the cold surfaces of the roof, sheathing, and the rafters. The result is a slow, insidious process of decay. The roof sheathing rots. The rafters rot. The entire roof structure is compromised. The modern cabin is a paradox. It's a house that is designed to look natural, but it's completely disconnected from nature. It's a house that is designed to be permanent, but it's constantly fighting against the forces of decay. It's a house that is designed to be a sanctuary, but it's a constant source of stress and expense. It's a house that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to build and tens of thousands of dollars a year to maintain. And it will never last as long as a simple sod dugout built by a pioneer with nothing but a spade and a dream. Comment modern cabin if you've seen these problems in person. Part 2. The living earth. The pioneers who settled the Great Plains didn't have concrete. They didn't have kiln-dried logs. They didn't have asphalt shingles. They had the earth, and they used it to build homes that were not just shelters, but living organisms. Homes that were as much a part of the landscape as the hills and the grass. As one pioneer, Uriah Oblinger, wrote to his wife in 1873, "I am building my walls 2 feet thick and have got them 3 feet high. But the weather today and tonight looks as though I would not do much at it tomorrow. I suppose you would like to know the size of my house. I won't say ours till you get here. It is 14 by 16 feet inside. Is this room enough for you to spread out in? If it is not, I will build larger this fall and take the present one for a stable." This was the reality of pioneer life. A man building a home with his own hands, with nothing but the earth and his determination. The sod dugout was the ultimate expression of this philosophy. It was a house that was not built on the land, but carved out of it. The process was simple, brutal, and incredibly effective. A settler would find a south-facing slope, ideally on the east side of a hill. This orientation was critical. The south-facing slope would catch the morning sun, warming the home in the early hours. The east side of the hill would be protected from the north wind, the cold, brutal wind that swept across the plains in the winter. He would start digging. With nothing but a spade, he would carve a rectangular hole into the earth, a wound in the side of the hill. This hole would become his home. He would dig down and he would dig back, creating a room that was 8 feet wide, 12 feet deep, and 7 feet high. The floor would be smoothed with a slight downward slant toward the front to allow water drainage. This was essential. Any water that seeped in would flow out, preventing the floor from becoming a muddy mess. The walls of the dugout were the earth itself. They were not dead, inert materials. They were alive. They were a complex ecosystem of roots, soil, and microorganisms. They were constantly breathing, constantly moving, constantly adapting to the changing seasons. In the summer, the earth walls were cool to the touch, a natural form of air conditioning. The temperature inside a sod dugout in the summer, even when it was over 100 degrees outside, would rarely rise above 70 degrees. In the winter, they were a massive thermal battery, storing the heat of the sun and radiating it back into the living space. The temperature inside a sod dugout in the winter, even when it was below zero outside, would rarely drop below 50 degrees. This is the power of thermal mass. The Earth has an enormous capacity to store heat. It absorbs heat slowly, and it releases heat slowly. This creates a stable, comfortable temperature inside the dugout, regardless of the extremes outside. Modern cabins, with their thin walls and lack of thermal mass, are at the mercy of the weather. They get hot in the summer. They get cold in the winter. They require constant heating and cooling, constant energy input, just to maintain a comfortable temperature. The front wall of the dugout, the only part that was exposed to the elements, was built of sod bricks. These were not the pathetic, sterile squares of sod that we buy at the garden center. These were thick, heavy blocks of prairie sod, cut from the virgin soil of the plains. The sod was a dense, tangled mat of grass roots, some of them going down 3 or 4 feet. These roots were the rebar of the prairie, the steel that held the earth together. The pioneers would cut the sod using a breaking plow, or a grasshopper plow. This was a special plow that was designed to cut through the thick prairie sod. It would cut a strip of sod 12 inches wide and 4 inches thick. The strip would then be cut into 3-foot lengths with a spade or a corn knife. These were the sod bricks, the building blocks of the prairie. The sod bricks were laid like any other bricks, in overlapping courses. The walls were typically 2 to 2.5 feet thick, creating a massive, solid structure. But they were not held together with mortar. They were held together by the grass itself. The pioneers laid the sod bricks with the grass side down. As the roots of the sod grew, they would interlock, weaving the individual bricks into a single, monolithic wall. This is a process that takes time. The wall would not be fully solid for several weeks or even months. But once the roots had grown together, the wall was incredibly strong. It was a wall that could withstand the brutal winds of the prairie, the driving rain, the heavy snow. It was a wall that was flexible, that could move and shift with the earth without cracking or collapsing. It was a wall that was alive. The wall was not just a collection of blocks. It was a living, growing thing, a vertical prairie. Comment living wall if you understand this concept. But here's the problem. A living wall is a wet wall, and a wet wall is a weak wall. So how did the pioneers keep their homes from turning into a muddy, collapsing mess? The answer is in the roof. Part 3. The breathing roof. The roof of a sod dugout was a masterpiece of natural engineering. It was a multi-layered system that was designed to do 3 things: shed water, breathe, and insulate. It was a system that was so effective that it is still being used in some of the most advanced, energy-efficient homes in the world today. The first layer of the roof was a framework of logs or milled lumber. This was the skeleton of the roof, the structure that would support the weight of the earth. The logs were laid from the top of the front wall to the top of the back wall, which was the top of the hill. The logs were spaced about 2 feet apart, creating a strong, stable framework. The choice of wood was critical. Cedar was preferred for its natural resistance to rot, but any straighted, strong logs would do. Cottonwood, willow, even the trunks of small trees. The logs were laid with a gentle slope to shed water. This slope was typically about 1 foot of rise for every 4 feet of run, a 25% slope. This was steep enough to shed water quickly, but not so steep that the sod would slide off. Over the logs, the pioneers laid a layer of brush, hay, or even buffalo hides. This was the sheathing of the roof, the layer that would prevent the sod from falling through the cracks between the logs. It was a rough, uneven layer, but it was effective. It created a breathable barrier between the living space and the roof. The brush and hay would allow air to circulate, preventing the buildup of moisture and condensation. And then came the sod. The pioneers laid a thick layer of sod over the brush, grass side up this time. The sod was the waterproofing of the roof, the living membrane that would protect the home from the rain and the snow. The sod was laid in the same way as the walls, in overlapping courses. And just like the walls, the sod on the roof would grow together, creating a single, seamless, waterproof mat. The sod roof was not a dead, inert thing. It was alive. It was a green roof, a living roof. In the spring, it would be covered with wildflowers, bluebells, black-eyed Susans, prairie roses. In the summer, it would be a lush green carpet. In the fall, it would turn brown and gold. And in the winter, it would be a thick, insulating blanket of snow. The living roof was the key to the dugout's success. It was a roof that breathed. It allowed moisture to escape from the living space, preventing the buildup of condensation and mold. The grass and the soil acted as a natural vapor barrier, but one that was permeable, one that allowed the moisture to escape slowly, naturally. It was a roof that insulated. The thick layer of sod, typically 6 to 12 inches thick, provided an R value of about R20 to R40, depending on the moisture content. This is comparable to modern insulation, and in the winter, when the snow fell, the insulation value would increase even more. A foot of snow has an R value of about R10. Combined with the sod, the roof would have an R value of R30 to R50, keeping the home warm and cozy even in the coldest weather. And it was a roof that was constantly renewing itself. The grass and the wildflowers would grow and die, creating a new layer of soil, a new layer of insulation, a new layer of life. The roof was not a static thing. It was a dynamic, living system. Comment, breathing roof, if you understand the importance of this design. Part 4. The Test of Time. The sod dugout was not a perfect home. It was dark. It was damp. It was often infested with insects and snakes. The pioneers would joke that when it rained, it would be muddy for 3 days inside the dugout. First, it would drip mud, then it would drip muddy water, and finally, it would drip clear water. But it was a home that was built to last, a home that was in harmony with the land, a home that could withstand the brutal extremes of the prairie climate. So why did they last? Why did these simple, primitive homes, built by amateur builders with no formal training, outlast our modern, technologically advanced cabins? The answer is simple. The sod dugout was a living system. It was a house that was constantly adapting, constantly changing, constantly renewing itself. It was a house that was part of the ecosystem, not a house that was fighting against it. The earth walls were a massive thermal battery, absorbing the heat of the sun during the day and releasing it at night. The living roof was a breathable, insulating membrane, keeping the home warm in the winter and cool in the summer. The entire structure was a single monolithic unit, held together by the interlocking roots of the prairie grass. It was a house that was as strong as the land itself. There are documented examples of sod dugouts and sod houses that have lasted over 120 years. The Nebraska State Historical Society has recorded sod houses that are still standing, still habitable after more than a century. With proper maintenance, with a good roof, with proper drainage, and with protection from livestock, these homes can last for 2 centuries or more. The potential longevity is, in the words of the Nebraska State Historical Society, presently indeterminate. We're still counting. Modern cabins, on the other hand, are dead systems. They are built of dead materials on dead foundations. They are sealed up tight, unable to breathe, unable to adapt. They are a constant battle against the forces of nature, and it is a battle that they will always lose. The average lifespan of a modern log cabin without major repairs and renovations is about 30 to 50 years. After that, the foundation is cracked, the logs are rotting, and the roof is leaking. The cost of repairs often exceeds the cost of building a new cabin. Conclusion: the wisdom of the earth. The sod dugout is more than just a historical curiosity. It is a lesson in humility, a lesson in sustainability, a lesson in the wisdom of the earth. It teaches us that the most powerful technologies are not always the newest. It teaches us that the most durable structures are not always the most rigid. And it teaches us that the most beautiful homes are not always the most expensive. We have forgotten this lesson. We have become so enamored with our own technology that we have lost sight of the simple, elegant solutions that are all around us. We have become so obsessed with fighting against nature that we have forgotten how to work with it. And in doing so, we have created a world of buildings that are not just unsustainable, but unhealthy. A world of buildings that are making us sick and that are making the planet sick. The Sod Dugout is a reminder that there is another way, a better way. A way of building that is in harmony with the land, with the climate, and with ourselves. It is a way of building that is not about dominating nature, but about coexisting with it. It is a way of building that is not about creating a monument to our own ego, but about creating a home that is a sanctuary, a refuge, and a source of life. The pioneers understood this. They understood that the earth is not just a platform to build on, but a living, breathing organism that we are a part of. They understood that the best way to build a home is not to fight against the land, but to become part of it. They understood that a house made of dirt can last longer than a house made of concrete and steel. For more on the forgotten wisdom of the pioneers, check out our video on what mountain men understood about log cabins that we forgot. And if you want to learn about another lost art of frontier living, watch our video on what happens when you smoke meat like a trapper did. My name is Sam, and this is Wild America.